Well, hello. It's been a while. It's the 26th day of March 2017. I'm your host, Doug Owen. I am back and happy to be here. Hope you are as well. Glad to have you tuned in. Go to blacklistedраdio.com. That's the mothership for this show. You can interactively chat with other listeners. And there's also sorts of cool stuff, exclusive content there for you. By the way, I am the senior editor of blacklistednews.com. And we do this show weekly, usually. Last week, it's bad memories. Stomach flu. One of the few things that will just knock you down. You know, you can kind of fight through fever. You can fight through allergies. It's springtime now. Welcome to spring and welcome to Central Texas allergies. My white truck is like a lime green color from all the pollen, so... we can do the show nasally, but when it comes to stomach flu, there's nothing quite like it, except maybe Ebola or something worse, but it's pretty bad. So a lot happened. It's been a crazy 2 weeks. For us, the site was down last week for about 3 days. I noticed that there was a huge drop in numbers of downloads and views of the podcast, and I was perplexed. Had I said something that was just too far over the line? There were so many people rejecting the show, and then I realized that the website was down. So check it out. We've got it back up. That was a good 6-hour stint trying to figure that out. So some of the things that happen behind the scenes. I hope that you're enjoying the spring and getting some good weather out there. We've got a lot of talking points, but it is a conversation. This show is really about you. It's kind of an insider perspective from a 10-year alternative media vet. We're going to talk about some inside baseball stuff. Pizzagate is back on the radar. What now I've affectionately called the deep swamp. We'll talk about some of the current events and things that are happening in the news, but we'd love to hear from you. 512-222-3067 text line, or you can leave voicemails. So you can text us anytime, and we appreciate it. We listen to almost all of them, and sometimes like promotions, things like that, interview requests. Haven't been doing a lot of those because trying to push this into a 1-hour format has been it's challenging because there's just so many things I'd love to comment on. But 800-313-9443 is the number that you need to be part of the show. Trump has had more time in this power position and is finding a lot of resistance to his agenda. One of the things that a lot of people want is to drain the swamp. I don't know if that's happening, quite honestly. The Pentagon is being filled with technocrats. Not a lot of attention on Patrick Shanahan, the new Deputy Defense Secretary. He's one of the 6 announced appointments. All 6 have extensive service in government and, in Shanahan's case, the defense industry. He is was the bigwig at Boeing. So, we're seeing more of what the Trump team, what the government is going to look like. And it is nothing less than an S show, a complete clown show on television when it comes to the talking points, some of the things that are being discussed when it comes to Trump. I mean, there's plenty of things that we comment on. And, we have been one of the, I think, more objective looks that you can find in the alternative media at what's happening today with the Donald Trump campaign and where we're at in 2017. A lot of people they're still attached. I mean, you see so many people in the alternative media that have become really, in the alt-right, which is a huge popular schism, have become just attached to Donald Trump and what it is that they think he represents, to the point that there is almost no criticism from a lot of people in the alternative right-leaning media. So, yes, Donald Trump was surveilled. It's not a shocker. I didn't need Nunes to come out and say this, but the right and left are going crazy over this assumption that people in the Obama administration had given intelligence or picked up intelligence and made that intelligence available not only to 16 different intelligence agencies thanks to Barack Obama's leaving executive order, but this huge military industrial complex, or the deep swamp, the NSA. Interestingly enough, Fox News fired Judge Napolitano shortly after Donald Trump quoted him saying that it was he had seen on Fox News that he was this very awesome lawyer that, I paraphrase, he said something like that, that he had heard this from GHCQ being the target of Judge Napolitano. And Israeli intelligence, French intelligence, German intelligence, there's a lot of intelligence agencies that probably have access, not only that, but all of these departments, thousands of analysts potentially have conversations that Donald Trump has made. The question is, why is what he and his cronies are doing, why is that it's so exceptionally rare? And the bigger question is whether or not this is standard operating procedure. Why not all of the criticism of John McCain's $1 million donations from the Saudi Arabians? There's an interesting backstory there with Michael Flynn, who was previously the Trump campaign's pick for defense secretary, and he is now retroactively put in the paperwork to be an official Turkish and I think it was Turkish. Should look at this. Well, it's in my notes in front of me. Jumping around here. Turkey, Flynn, and the deep swamp. Yes. So he's now part of the lobbying groups. He's an official registered agent of another state. And that is a common practice. I think a lot of people are missing the grander point that so many of our politicians are actually working as agents for other countries that in their interest above the United States or the citizens or the U.S. dollar or any of the other things that people vote for Donald Trump to enact, to bring them. So anyway, a great piece from Moon of Alabama has this: gas from Israel and the Flynn wiretapping behind the deep state infighting over the Trump election. And I'll just read a paragraph from this. What is really behind the deep state infighting over the U.S. elections and the wiretapping of the Trump campaign? It's a great question. There's a lot of talk, but not a lot of analysis of what's actually happening. This schism, because there are obviously lots of military industrial complex players. The Millplex, that is the deep, that's the swamp, for lack of a better term. Over 50% of the U.S. annual budget is military. So when you look at the pie chart of what the U.S. government annually spends money on, it looks like Pac-Man. It's a huge pie for the military-industrial complex. Politicians love to talk about all the small, entitlement programs and safety net programs, but when it really comes to where the money goes and where it could be better spent, it's right there. It's in front of everybody, but they don't talk about it. So anyway, so there's a lot of players on Trump's team. He didn't get there without a lot of help. I think we can all agree. So anyway, the former director of the CIA, under Clinton, James Woolsey, went to Wall Street Journal and offered up some information, likely some true and some false, on the retired General Flynn and the lobbying businesses he was involved in. Woolsey is an arch neoconservative. He had worked on the transition team of Trump, but got fired over growing tensions over Trump's vision for the intelligence agencies. Flynn is the former national security advisor to Trump, who later got fired. Woolsey was a board member of Flynn's former lobbying group company, FIG. Woolsey claims that in September 2016, he took part in a meeting between Flynn and high-level Turkish officials, including the Turkish foreign minister and the energy minister, who is the son of the Turkish president, Erdogan. During the meeting, Woolsey claims a brainstorming took place over how the Turkish cult leader, Fethullah Gulen, could probably by illegal means be removed from the U.S. and handed over to Turkey. Gulen is accused by the Erdogan mafia, of course, of initiating a coup against the Turkish government. The U.S. claims officially that there's no evidence for such an accusation, that Gulen can therefore be not rendered to Turkey. So it goes on, and the crux of it is that Michael Flynn was working with the Israelis to get these Turkish oil fields to work with them to get gas to the European networks of gas pipelines. There's a lot of money to be made, and of course that brings a schism, because there are those, especially in Europe, that are not thrilled with Erdogan and do not want to do business with a man that is leveraging his population, unleashing herds of refugees, because that's just how many people want to escape Turkey, because it's such a great place to be right now, apparently, into Europe. And of course, you're not seeing a lot of media attention on the horrible atrocities that were committed post-coup. I mean, we're talking about thousands, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people being detained, teachers, military, policemen, librarians, students, basically in large torture chambers and left to rot in jail cells. Humanitarian crisis, but just probably one of many that aren't getting a lot of attention, like the one that's playing out with a large player, of course, in the New World Order, if you will, as John McCain continues to enlighten us about the post-World War. If you haven't seen the clip, there's a great clip of McCain saying New World Order over and over again recently. But that whole legacy. So, yeah, that's kind of business as usual, and there are competing interests, some of which Flynn represents, that faction that we've talked about, aligned with Eric Prince, formerly of Blackwater, and other consultants and people that facilitate business. I mean, that's one of the things. Michael Flynn was getting paid by Russia Today to go on a speaking circuit. The U.S. government is now looking into the alternative media ties to Russia. Drudge Report, maybe. Alex Jones has been named along with Russia Today as people under FBI investigation for those ties. So as this witch hunt kind of plays out, we're seeing what's not being talked about when it comes to this deep state. And of course, this very, very dangerous precedent where we're now seeing the CIA being given the authority to wage secret, covert wars via drone under the Trump administration. So things are definitely going to be heating up, I would imagine, in Syria over the next several months in the bid to eradicate ISIS, one of the things that Donald Trump promised to do. Now, how that plays out, there's a lot of people that are very optimistic. All right, let's get in there. Let's get tough. But I'm more interested in the details and we're not getting a lot of those. Interesting piece that kind of highlights what we're saying here. $10 trillion missing from the Pentagon, and no one, not even the DOD, the Department of Defense, knows where it is. Over a mere 2 decades, the Pentagon has lost track of a mind-numbing $10 trillion. That's trillion with a fat taxpayer-funded T, and no one, not even the Department of Defense, really knows what happened, where it went, even through audits of the federal agencies. After that became mandatory in 1996, the Pentagon has apparently made it an exception for itself. A full 20 years later, it stands pretty much never having complied with that federal mandate. Not that it is shocking. The thing that's shocking is so many people are worried about Trump care and how we're going to fund these solutions, and who's going to the 20 million people or 40 million people that will die because of Donald Trump's Trump care, and whether Steve Bannon has been threatening Republicans. All of these things that you see on TV that are just pure dribble. They are meaningless talking points, and really designed absolutely as a cover for real politic, what's really happening. So, and of course, they're not going to, bite the hands that feed them when it comes to talking about the military-industrial complex. The Pentagon laid out this really, really interesting piece of paper. It's a 72-page document by this gentleman, Hagel, who had put this together for the Defense Secretary Robert O'Rourke, who was a lead author of the report. And it talked about how to make America great again in a lot of ways, through transformational advances in nanotechnology, robotics, energy, automation, all of these things that are so tied to the quote-unquote military-industrial complex. And when you look at what we have today and where we will be in just a few years technologically, that ultimately will be the future. And the military, the CIA, the NSA, that's the one thing that people can take away from the Vault leaks, Vault 7 from WikiLeaks, is that the United States government has made it a point to infiltrate every aspect of the Fortune 500 companies, all of the technology corporations that they have any influence in. They have been instrumental in bugging and providing not only the technology, but they have through In-Q-Tel and other initiatives actually funded the creation of things like Google. Google would not be here today if it wasn't for the CIA and a huge amount of upstart funding. And all of this is designed to be able to automate warfare in the 21st century and to remain absolutely relevant. And rather than just sitting here and having a talk about the technocrats when it comes back to Donald Trump, these are the people that he is entrusting in the branches of government, and these technological innovations are going to be the future. They will determine the future, and that's kind of scary. You're seeing that being turned on Donald Trump himself when it comes to WikiLeaks and this revelation. I remember 10 years ago being that guy. Look, the government's getting into your TVs. The TVs will be listening to you. They'll be able to turn it on, turn your car off and on, know where you're at 24 hours a day. It's going to be an omnipresent, and it is not going to be good. It's going to be very bad. And people thought, well, obviously you're crazy and you're a kook. So anyway, quick break. On the other side, we'll be back with more Blacklisted news. Stay tuned. All right, welcome back. It's Blacklisted Radio. Yeah, so the travel ban, or at least the U.S. ban on laptops, tablets, and other electronic devices, was spearheaded by the CEOs of Delta, United, and American Airlines. They were upset because Gulf carriers, and I want to thank Rex, who just texted the show at 512-222-3067, brought a little extra to the plate here. He writes, the Gulf carriers have received over $50 billion in documented subsidies from their government owners in 2004. Chief executives of the three big networks wrote in a recent letter to Secretary of State Rex Tillerson. Mr. Secretary, the letter continues, we are confident that the Trump administration shares our view on the importance of enforcing our open skies agreements. So this is a way to go after those companies. Right or wrong, I mean, I do think that, expanding into U.S. markets with government money, that seems wrong, but that's something the U.S. government does all the time. Expanding U.S. businesses into countries is, part and parcel. I mean, that's really what the CIA is good at doing. And that is working with, corporate benefactors and corporate businesses and using that kind of in a neoliberal way of, supporting what it used to be the Cold War, the non-friendlies, the red states, people that were warming up to the Soviet Union. So you have lots of those Cold Warriors. Interestingly enough, so yeah, I mean, this is just business. It has nothing to do with security. Whether you agree with what Rex Tillerson is doing, I think some of you might, but it has nothing to do with keeping you safe. Everything to do with corporate competition. So it's just an interesting nugget, and it shows you, just with this one example, how little of what you get on television and from the mainstream media concerning these issues. They just talk about Trump being a Nazi, but they don't give you the backstory. That's what we try to do here. I want to talk about a few things that have come up over the last few days, and one of which is Pizzagate, or as we like to call on the show, Pizza Time. Alex Jones apologizes to James Alefantis about Pizzagate. If you haven't seen this, it's pretty interesting. I don't think I've ever heard an apology issued by Alex Jones that was completely lawyer speak, but I saw this, kind of surreal. Basically said that everything that he has said and his staff and all of the information, video, commentary that he's produced about Pizzagate or had references to that he has gotten rid of, removed from YouTube. Apparently he is being sued by James Alefantis. Now, interestingly enough, his boyfriend David Brock, who is a big-time political insider, operator. He is the head of Media Matters, which is a big recipient of George Soros funding, amongst other neoliberal think tanks. Very, very well-connected power player. Of course, James Alefantis is the owner of Comet Ping Pong. If you followed along with Pizzagate at any level, you may be familiar with the story. How this release of documents from John Podesta's email showed secret communications, coded communications, referencing pizzas and hot dogs and the like, and this led to many believing that Comet Ping Pong was a hangout or possibly a place where children were preyed upon, or people in the pedophile ring, DC elite, it had some kind of connection to this place, and there's a lot to be said about it. But the fact that you have this heart attack, you have this push, and then I've seen a lot of other interesting people kind of making the headlines. H Street had a piece out about David Seamen. Now, David Seamen is, I don't know. I don't want to make a lot of assumptions about him as a person. I actually interviewed him, which oddly enough has somehow been memory hold. I cannot find this interview of David Seamen. I was sure that I put it on YouTube. I don't know what happened to it. It wasn't that interesting. David Seamen kind of came onto the independent media scene in 2014 when he was running for Congress in Florida, and talked about surveillance a lot. And he was kind of, it seemed to me at least, to be an opportunist. Some of the things that were alleged against him in the H Street expose of David Seamen. The headline reads, "Is the man behind the White House Pizzagate really or rally just in it for the money?" So there was a Pizzagate rally that happened over the weekend. Now, so anyway, David Seamen, he ran for Congress and he did a lot of interviews on RT with Abby Martin. Abby Martin became a good friend of his, I guess, and he was friends with the promoter of Joe Rogan's show, his podcast, and he was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and I saw him there, and I thought, wow, this guy is just somebody who kind of came out of nowhere, and then he became a Huffington Post journalist. Of course, took in a lot of money for his congressional campaign, went nowhere, obviously, with that, and now he is like the aficionado on Pizzagate. You see the guy everywhere, and every other day it's he's deleted his Twitter, and then Twitter comes back and they're after him, and there's insiders telling him that tomorrow there's going to be this huge arrest of these pedophile rings, and we're going to hear all of this stuff come out. So he's kind of been a progenitor of a lot of the I would say intentional disinformation, and using a lot of these tactics I've seen people use over the years to draw attention to themselves, kind of attention whore type tactics. Every day. I mean, Alex Jones does that to a certain extent. I mean, I've never heard anybody complain more about his YouTube videos being, taken down. But if I go to YouTube and put in Alex Jones, there's 3 million. There's 3 million videos. I would bet that Alex Jones's videos probably take up 2% of all of YouTube servers, maybe even more. I mean, there's so much on there. So, it's kind of this hyperbolic thing, and you see it in the alternative media as well. This big thing's going to happen, and just wait. I mean, December 31st, 2012 that was a big deal. Things were going to happen, and so I've seen this pattern over and over again. But there is this pushback, and now we're seeing a lot of the commentary being, by Alex Jones himself, being memory hold, and you have people out there. I mean, we've talked about some really, I think Ben Swann's expose on Pizzagate, and there's a lot of really interesting, very valuable information that came from a lot of people's investigations. Of course, there's a lot of poison in the well as well, and that's really what I kind of took away from David Seamen becoming the Pizzagate guy. First he's the congressional guy. I'm the honest guy that's going to be there, and then I'm this guy, and then I'm that guy, and for a while he was the Bitcoin guy, and on and on and on. So kind of an opportunist, but somebody like Alex Jones that is being thrown into the fire over Pizzagate. There's a big pushback. All right, let's talk about things. We got fake news that we have to counter, and we got fake weed. DEA approved synthetic marijuana for a company that spent $500,000 to keep weed illegal. According to the Washington Post, Insys has developed a drug based on a synthetic ingredient, THC, called Syndros. So you're going to probably hear more about this. This drug was approved by the FDA in July for the treatment of AIDS and cancer patient symptoms. Insys Therapeutics is a small player on a national scale. The Center for Responsive Politics, this from antimedia.com, reported that they spent only $120,000 lobbying in D.C. in 2016, but in Arizona, where the company is based, they forked over $500,000. And they did it to keep marijuana illegal in the traditionally Republican state. So, yeah, I'm sure they gave John McCain New World Order. a handsome sum to continue being the. That's one of the biggest paydays for the military-industrial complex and the justification for the militarization of police departments across the nation. That's a lot to say. John McCain's that guy. He is a player. So anyway, pretty ironic. You would think that they would want to, they don't want other people creating marijuana or medicating themselves. They want to get into the middle of it. Interesting piece. There's some stuff happening in Colombia. We read this from the New York Times. With the rebels gone, Colombia jumps into the pot industry. There's a Canadian company called Pharma Cielo, and they have actually lobbied the Colombian government to allow them exclusively to grow marijuana legally. Now, this is pretty unprecedented because most of these the U.S.-funded plans and government-funded drug war cockamamie schemes were to, get these farmers. They were growing coca, marijuana, other poppy, whatever it may be, to grow pineapples and tomatoes and other things that they just didn't have access to sell into an international market. And it's always failed miserably because guess what? Cocaine, is a bumper crop, and tomatoes maybe not so much. And if you can't get those tomatoes to somewhere where people will pay high prices outside of Colombia, your neighbors, you're going to be in a bad way. So that's never worked. This may work, but oddly enough, FARC, which was the, of course, rebel communist faction that was controlling large swaths of Colombia until recently, they were funding the paramilitary activities of their forces with drug money. Funny enough, this piece highlights how the FARC were extorting people for taxes and businesses and residents and making them grow drugs for money. And then when you juxtapose that to what the government's doing, forcing them to pay taxes, forcing them to only do this legally under a monopoly, it's the exact same thing, although the people of Colombia were actually making more money growing dope for the FARC. Because they had access to international markets, whereas this Canadian firm, and think about that. I mean, that's another whole story in and of itself, that a private company has now legally, gone to a foreign nation and changed their laws, lobbied their laws for U.S. and Canadian domestic consumers of, not just, cannabis or marijuana, but all of the oils and other things that you can extract and create from that. The hemp industry, probably something that should be resurrected immediately in this country. When it comes to jobs and textiles and making America great again, it's kind of a no-brainer. But there you go. Fake weed. We also have fake weather. If you didn't know any better, you would have thought that we were going to experience just 10 days ago. This is already memory hold. 10 days ago, New York City was going to be under snow, multiple feet of snow. This blizzard is going to be horrendous, and there was lots of fear and hype on television about take cover. So, and of course, global warming, climate change, those things, anything that they can use fear to sell, they do that. So anyway, I saw this Shepard Smith. He's so quaint. He had this diatribe about this report that the National Weather Service actually knew that the blizzard that it predicted earlier in the week wouldn't produce the large amounts of snow they initially stated. However, the National Weather Service decided to keep pushing the worst case scenario so as not to confuse the public. Now, this is a huge revelation. Fake weather. We don't want to make all the stupid lemmings. We've already scared them, and we don't want to lose our legitimacy. There's the bevy of reasons why they may do this, but it just shows you how a federally funded agency thinks so little of telling you the truth, because they don't want to confuse you. The truth might make you confused. I mean, isn't it telling? It's so in your face. And Shepard Smith said it's just plain wrong. What you're doing is wrong. It's not that it's wrong. It's that this is just one example of thousands that highlight how government agencies keep us in the dark for our own best interest, as not to confuse us. So, the weather, you would think that the weather isn't that politicized. I mean, it is somewhat now. It is being weaponized, and not just talking about the chemtrails over Arizona there, Craig. I'm talking about the political football that it becomes over the last few years, and the justification for taxing the people more and more and more, and ultimately making you subsidize the bad deeds of these polluters. Which I don't want companies and countries to pollute. I think that's kind of a no-brainer right there. We can live cleaner, more efficient ways to do that. And with a burgeoning population, you have to come up with new ways. You're not going to be able to, have a 20th century grid, electrical grid, fuel and power the 21st century. It's just not going to happen. Things do have to change. It's just where we're at. Uber's an interesting group of businesses. Now, Uber suspends self-driving car test after autonomous vehicle crashes in Arizona. Now, of course, there's a good chance that many of their other Uber drivers with human beings behind the wheels crash, and they do on almost a daily basis. I'm sure a daily basis. But when it comes to this, I think a lot of people want to take away that, yes, the robots are not going to outpace us and relegate us quite yet. Not so fast. We're going to take a quick break. Back on the other side, it's Blacklisted Radio. All right, welcome back. It's Blacklisted Radio. Final segment here on the show. Trying to leave you with something positive. I look at technology, kind of mentioned that, and the control of that when it comes to industry in the future of not just this country but humanity. It's going to be a technological revolution. It already is. We're starting to see how we are integrating into a high information society. Ken and I were just talking during the break. I mean, people have never. It's not that the people don't see the problems. It's not that people. I mean, even though maybe somewhat uninformed and getting bad information from television or talking points from the National Weather Service, they're designed not to confuse. Not just the guy behind. I always think of when I was watching that. I was thinking of the Wizard of Oz. The man behind the curtain. Do not confuse the sheeple. Yeah, it was one of those things. Just wanted to use that effect, really, to be quite honest. And so it's this disdain for the majority of people that just can't. Not everybody can jump into the conversation. That's why we do this podcast, because I think it's a little meta. We go beyond that, and it's a consortium of ideas. You guys, support the show. It's commercial free in its podcast format, and it's not corporately funded. I want to thank the people that do make it possible, though, here in the final segment. Should have been in the first segment, but thanks to Sarah, Rick, ATX Live, Kimmy, Terrence, and Leslie. And if you haven't seen Dave Chappelle's new comedy shows, there's two of them out, two sets. Apparently, or allegedly, Netflix paid him $60 million for these there's going to be three specials that he's selling. But I had to watch it because I saw so much angst and people being completely offended by this, by Dave Chappelle's skit. And I knew that it was going to be. I didn't think it was that controversial, actually. It's really not that controversial. I just realized how many bloggers are out there that are completely butthurt and find the thing about comedy or anything that's really funny is that it's somewhat based in truth, and it has a stinging edge. It bothers you because it is true, and only through comedy can you have these kind of conversations, or even meta conversations about topics where people can take a step back from the topic itself and appreciate some of the nuances about it. Whether it's rape, can't say rape, it's horrible. I mean, rape is prevalent on planet Earth. It is a topic, and it's a sad state of affairs that people, physically hump one another, and rape each other. But if you look at the animal kingdom, it's pretty freaking common. So, I don't know. It's not to be made fun of. If you have a light heart, don't watch Dave Chappelle's show. I actually recommend it. It's okay to be uncomfortable, and that is comedy. Guys, gals, thanks for your time. I know it's somewhat parted show here, at least mentally, but I had a fun time doing it. I'll be back next week for another live edition of Blacklisted Radio. Ken will be too. And look forward to hearing from you. Text me anytime during the week, 512-222-3067. And via con Dios.